All right. A very good evening to you all. This is your brother and friend Joshua of the New African Concept. And as we always do on Wednesdays, we come your way with a teaching session. On Mondays, we do that of the fact checkers, where we answer specific questions. And then on Fridays, we engage in the extended edition of the Voice of Reformation. And all through for about a month or a little over a month now, what we've been treating has been on the subject of the understanding the concept of the church. Understanding the concept of the church. And today we want to continue with our teaching session on understanding the concept of the church. By this time, if you have been following, I guess you should understand by this time that we've already said that the word church comes from the Greek term or word ecclesia. And ecclesia itself is not a theological term. Rather, it is a political term. It was borrowed from the concept of politics, where it was used to refer to special people who have been called out from amongst the masses, and they have been given the charge to, that is the senators in ancient Rome, and they've been given the charge to take decisions that would drive the empire or the kingdom or the nation forward. So it was that same term that was coined or was borrowed from the world of or the language of politics of that time, and was used to define the army that Christ sought to also build, and that is also named the church or the ecclesia. So one lesson that we pick is that anytime you hear the church, it is not an end in itself, but rather a means to an end. This is a very important lesson that we must understand. That when you hear the church is not an end in itself. Anytime you hear the church, which is the ecclesia, in Rome or in ancient Roman politics, they were specially called out. In this time, it would be like that of the MPs or the politicians or the parliamentarians elected, from our various constituencies. It is not just for election's sake, so that they will perform a particular duty. So you can call the MPs when they meet at the parliamentarian house, you can call it is another name, you can also call it the church or ecclesia, that is specially called out people from amongst the citizenry of Ghana to take sound and critical decisions that will drive the nation forward. So the politicians or the parliamentary processes is not an end in itself. It is a means to an ultimate end. And that ultimate goal is the driving the force of the country. In the same vein, when you hear Ghana, when you hear, the church is a vessel to be used as a means onto something specific. So what is the essence of the church? You see, these things are very necessary. Say yante sa enome asia eno na impempi no emaye yakoso akakra na yakoso akakra na obi aba ofili se o asori no ne dwumedi a o se edini obi so ba o ofili se asori no edwumedi a o se edini, and we are not having one united focus. But it is my prayer that God will help us to understand these things over and over again, so that we can grow in the things of God. So you must understand that the concept of the church is to create a vessel, is to create a medium which will serve as a means to an ultimate end, to be able to fulfill a particular task. Today I want to measure on the Fivefold Ministry and its relation to the church. Yes, but I just want to give a little background. And that background is that God needed to extend his kingdom. We've been saying that kingdoms are the glory of kingdoms is predicated on its ability to expand itself. So kingdoms or empires, their ability to expand and conquer other lands so that its territory will increase and expand is one of its glory. So God had a dwelling place, and then that is the kingdom, or he has a kingdom. He is king, he is a monarch. So God has a kingdom, and then he wants to expand it. And that is why he created the earth, so that he can expand it. And then in doing so, he created man, that is Adam, and then gave him a dominion mandate, so that he will be in charge of the things of the earth, so that he will be more or less like the chieftain, or the satrap, or the captain, or the governor of the things on the earth. This mandate that was given to man was lost through the fall, and that charge came back to the devil. And then since that time, from Genesis 3:15, when God gave the first messianic promise concerning that the seed of the woman as against the seed of the serpent, that the seed of the woman shall bruise the head of the serpent, and then that of the serpent shall also bruise the knee, the ankle or the feet of the seed of the woman, referring to what Jesus will be doing to the devil through his death and crucifixion, or his death and resurrection. So we see here something, progressive. But now, what happened was that God began a particular journey. That is the journey of redemption. So he chooses, Noah. He chooses Noah. Actually, it is Adam, Eve, they gave birth to Cain and Abel. Abel was killed by Cain, and then Cain became full of himself. He started a city, and then, of course, the devil was using him to pioneer a new or a different civilization. And then also they gave birth to another guy called Seth. And the Bible says that in those days, men began calling upon the name of the Lord. So God was using, so we can call Seth as a church. The family or the lineage of Seth can also represent that of a church, which is he was using them as a means, because their heart was inclined to calling upon the name of the Lord. They was using as a means to also achieve an ultimate purpose. Then through the lineage of Seth, we had people like Noah also coming onto the scene, who was a righteous man and then seeking to follow the dictates or the demands of Christ. Now, as he continues in that way, we know that the floods came and destroyed everybody. Noah had 3 sons, that is Japheth, Shem, and then Ham. Now, we know that Ham, the lineage of Ham, that is the Africans or the blacks. And then we have the Japheth, that is the Europeans, and then Americans, and then co. And then we have that of Shem, also representing the Asians, particularly the Israelites, and then all. So through the lineage of Shem, we then have people like Abel, and then Abel's grand lineage, we also had Abraham. So in Genesis chapter 12, we see God going to Abraham and then choosing him as a vessel. Abraham through you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. So that is an example of a church. So God chose Abraham, and you can call it a church, ecclesia. He was specially called out of the different races in order to be used as a vessel, as a conduit for an ultimate end. God was looking forward that all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, but then he was doing it progressively through Abraham. So Abraham, then to Isaac, God repeats the same thing, then to Jacob, then to the people of Israel. So you should know that God was not just doing favoritism. No, his ultimate goal is to bless all the nations of the earth. But he was using the people of Israel. That is why Stephen referred to them as the church in the wilderness. So the church in the wilderness refers to the church of the old covenant. That is the old people or the ancient Israelites. So the people of Israel were called, they were God's people. They were God's chosen people, not for choosing sake, but to be used as conduits, to be used as vessels in order to bless all the nations of the earth. That is why he said in Isaiah chapter 60, he said, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people, but the Lord shall arise upon you, and his glory shall be seen upon you." And he said that, "And Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising," which means that God chose the people of Israel to use as a conduit, to use as a vessel, to use as a means in order to bless all the nations of the earth. So the series we've been treating so far is understanding the concept of the church, and we want to drum home the point that the church is not an end in itself, but rather anytime you hear the church is a means to achieve an ultimate end. So when God called Abraham, it is an example of a church that what? Through you, all the nations of the earth is going to be blessed. So the people of Israel was just a representation. It was just a physical demonstration of the weightier matters or of the real church that Jesus intended to build. Then came Jesus on the scene in Matthew chapter 16 verse 18, after Peter gave the right revelation that you are the Son of the living God, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Now he said that, "I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So that is the idea that Jesus was giving unto us. In Ephesians chapter 3 verse 10. In Ephesians chapter 3 verse 10, it also talks of the fact that God was saying that through the church, he intends to showcase his manifold wisdom to all principalities. Through the church, via the church, he intends to showcase his manifold wisdom to all principalities in heaven above and on earth below. So what is the idea? The idea here is that the church is not an end in itself, but rather the church is a means to achieve an ultimate end. The church is a means to achieve an ultimate end. And this is very necessary. This is very important that we understand it. Much of the problems we are having in the church, in Ghana today, in Africa, and then even in our generation, is that we have thought, or we have misunderstood, and we have assumed that the church is an end in itself. So once we go to church on Sundays, once we have our tithes and offerings, once we have our annual harvest, we are building our cathedrals or we are building our churches, and then we are having programs. We have our billboards and our flyers, and then the church system, the church as an organization is running, then we are okay. Right now, what are the definitions of ministerial success? Immediately you start a church and then you tell somebody, I'm a man of God, or I'm a pastor, I'm into ministry. The first thing he will ask you is that, how many are you? He is not interested in how many disciples. When he say how many, I've run a ministry for maybe 5 years now. Okay. Oh, what you sorry 5 years? Hey, sir, most you sorry Diana. Hey, now mododo saying these are the questions. The interest is not how many generals have you raised for Christ. The interest is not how many of your members have you been able to disciple. These are secondary, tertiary, and quaternary questions. The primary questions or the markers of ministerial success have become how many are you? Even if they have not become disciples, even if they have not been groomed, as long as you are 200, as long as you are 500, that means that ministry is going on. And then the second question, either you have built your cathedral, you have built your auditorium, or you have been able to amass enough money to be able to hire a state-of-the-art auditorium. Na baby I'm want air conditioning room. Air conditioning in. So these are the things. Why do we think like this? We think like this because software many chain there mean to me sorry. So things like so far me ni chain it pa the mean to me corner sorry and I say omunia sorry dan me the mean to me ko park me car no mu share classroom. So even if the place is filled with the power of God, even if the man of God is blessed with understanding in the things of God, and then he is raising them to be disciples, because they are meeting in a classroom, he doesn't see it befitting to his status, because he's a medical doctor, because he's a judge, because he's a, how many judges will have the humility to drive and then be worshiping at a place? Even the church is worshiping, even if so omo new branch, say ebia or joining an established church that is ebia Methodist, Presby, Assemblies of God. Now ebia you say ye new branch enti e said ebia ebetimi aben nkrofo no. Now say ote sa zone mu ho. Na oye judge or your top notch judge pa or one 4x4. Not because into omo pavilion I say and I say be a musha classroom. Not all of them though, you get some. But just imagine how many judges will be willing to drive their Pajaros, their 4-wheel drives, and then park it and then walk into a classroom. And now on metna a plastic chairs, so I say in kunya students seats. So why? Because we think that the church is an end in itself. But to understand the concept of the church, it is ecclesia. It is a means to an end. It means that the means must be important, but also we must focus into the say, what is the ultimate goal? And on the say money here. Because if we lose sight of the ultimate goal, then we will be so occupied and preoccupied with just the ceremonial attachments, the rituals that associate it, and we will be defining our growth, we will be defining our progress. So today, the markers of ministerial success is how much money you are able to bring in, is how many weddings you were able to conduct, perhaps how many funerals you were able to also successfully conduct, how many buildings or the extent of the church building you were able to build, the number, the numerical strength, how many people are in. These are the markers of ministerial success. They are not wrong in itself, but when they become the primary parameters to consider, then it means that we are getting something wrong. Quickly, let's turn our Bibles to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. It says that, and he personally gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers. For what? For the training of the saints in the work of the ministry, to build up the body of Christ until we all reach unity in the faith, in the knowledge of God's Son, growing into a mature man with a stature measured by Christ's fullness. I'll end there, 11 to 13. So the few minutes left, that is what I want to quickly raise some points on. So we are talking of the church and its relation to the fivefold ministry. The fivefold ministry. Yedika said the church is not an end in itself, it is a means to an end. It means that there is an ultimate goal, there is an ultimate objective. And a church a medium. Church is supposed to be a training center. The church is not an entertainment hub for believers. The church is a training ground to train believers for the work of the ministry. So the church or the pulpit is not just a platform to express the oratory skills of men of God. No. The pulpit is not to test how you are skillful in talking or public speaking. The pulpit, and for that matter, the church is actually a training ground. It is a boot camp. It is a the soldier for are enlisted. Na ye diomu akoshe in Rome. Na ye train you against the day of battle. Christianity is an invitation to a warfare. I've always been saying that Christianity is not, or the essence of Christianity is not about the happiness of man, but rather it is about the glory of God. And anytime we are talking about the glory of God, then it means that it is going to suffer pressure from hell. That is why Jesus said that I will build my church and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Because Jesus knows that the duty or the mandate of the church will naturally attract the pressure of hell. So invitation to Christ is not an invitation to a life of just a rosiness, a life of bed of roses. No. Invitation to Christ or invitation to Christianity is invitation to warfare. We are in a daily battle and we must not lose sight. That's why Paul said that put on the whole armor of God. Why? Because Christianity is warfare. Christianity was born on the battlefield. Christianity, it was born, it is a year war. Christianity at a year battlefield. Also. It was sealed. Christianity was sealed with the blood of Christ. And then ever since that time, it has been sustained by the blood of the martyrs. So the language Christianity understands a sacrifice. Sacrifice. Christianity is not a civilian lifestyle. That is why Paul said that for he that warreth must not entangle himself with civilian affairs. Uye Christonia, uye asreni, uye sojeni, you must not entangle yourself with civilian affairs. The greatest havoc that the devil has caused to Christianity is that the devil has taken Christianity from its original birth land. The birthplace, the hometown. The hometown of Christianity is warfare. The devil has repositioned Christianity and taken it from its hometown and then placed it in a free zone. Civilian lifestyle. So now it has become a land of entertainment instead of a land of warfare. And God is calling his church back to its original state. Its original state is the state of love and sacrifice, where people are in a bleeding state of sacrifice for the cause of Christ. For the cause of Christ. So to some he gave apostles. To some, even before, look at verse 7. Ephesians chapter 4, answer now, obedru verse 11, or verse 4, or say, verse 7, or say, now grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of the Messiah's gift. Each one of us. Enti me pese oti asye se, or say, grace has been given to each one of us. Please, it is a theological error or a theological fallacy to think that the pastors, the prophets, the apostles, they are the specially ordained people, and then they are representing the priests of the old covenant. In the new covenant, the promise is for every believer. Or say in Revelation chapter 1 verse 5 and 6, or say, and he has made us kings and priests. You are a priest, you are a king. So you can't priest. The priest of the new covenant is not defined by pastors and your fivefold ministry. No, the fivefold ministry is not the priest. The priesthood of all believers. We must really appreciate this particular understanding. In verse 7 now, or say, grace has been given to each one of us, every one of us, each one of us. Once you are a Christian, once you are a believer, grace has been given unto you to perform a particular function, to perform a particular duty, to fulfill a particular mandate. That is why he said in Colossians 4:17, he said, and say unto Archippus, take heed to the ministry which thou hast received in the Lord, that thou mayest what? Fulfill it. Archippus was not an apostle, but he said that there is a mandate. ti okotro Kolose for no ka chen se mon kan kire akwa na efre no Akipu se o ma nani nda ho na dwumade na Yankopon de ahye no nsa no ontumi enye enkoduro wiye no ontumi enwie e kire se wo ye Kristoni a bebia wo bia wotie nsemi e kire se Yankopon de dwumade bia eden ahye wo nsa. Don't shift everything onto the Fivefold Ministry. They cannot do it alone. And then the Fivefold Ministry, pastors, prophets, don't create a notion that you are the chief architects and the duty of the church members is just to give you money so that you use it to expand the ministry. No. In Tiyerisha, I want to leave you with 2 or 3 major points. Now to verse 11, Biomno, I say, he gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. These fivefold ministry unto a particular purpose. What is the purpose? Okanoma miensa. De dikan or say for the training, for the training. Look at the key word, for the training of the saints in the work of the ministry. That is number 1. Number 2, to build up the body of Christ. And then number 3, to do all these things until we reach the unity in the faith. And the fivefold ministry, Jumedia, according to the text, or see omu yenye and say, the first is that to train the members in the church or believers for the work of the ministry. Now it is like the fivefold ministry, ministry, and our members, we have reduced the members to just an inactive state. All what they are to do is to give us their tithes, their offerings, their monies, their support, and then be sharing us on Facebook and then all, so that we do the work of the ministry. That is a misrepresentation of the intention of God for the church. This is what the Bible is saying, that the apostles, prophets, teachers, evangelists, and pastors, all these special giftings, they were given unto a particular purpose. And that purpose is that, 1, they will train the saints in the church for the work of the ministry. And it is the duty of the fivefold ministry to train the believers in the church so that all of us, that is the fivefold ministry, including all the saints, will be involved in the work of the ministry. So the first thing is that the work of the ministry is a duty of every Christian, not a reserve of the fivefold ministry. I'm taking it again. The fivefold ministry does not define ministry. The fivefold ministry are special forces that have been brought in or specially brought in by God in order to train us for the work of the ministry. It's just like maybe I was in school of pharmacy. Now, in school of pharmacy, there are sub-departments. What is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal, they say, said the we will become professional pharmacists. Maybe I'm in this year, but the ultimate goal is that said the when we get out of the school of pharmacy onto the field, we will be professional pharmacists to be able to deliver at that point. That is the ultimate goal. So there are professors. We had 5 departments. We have department of pharmacology. We have department of social science, clinical and social pharmacy. We have department of pharmaceutical chemistry. There are specific professors in all these departments. And it was their corporate duty to train us for the work of pharmacy or for the profession of pharmacy. That is how it is. So the grounds of the church, a training ground. Pastors, prophets, this and to serve the saints. That is number 1. Number 2, and I say, because of that, fivefold ministry, omu attention, and I say a beba a church no so. Because when it comes dealing with outsiders or unbelievers, it is the duty of the entire body of Christ that must be involved in the machinery of the work of the ministry. Time ninety, I may not be able to even go far, but let me give you just some few gist so that you really understand. Now, Inti, this is it. The definition of success. Let me start with evangelists. Fivefold ministry, evangelists, apostles, any diakeka. I want you to understand from the Bible or from the text that their duty is actually more towards the church, to train them, to empower them, so that now all of us, that is the fivefold ministry personnel, and then the entire church will now be involved in the work of the ministry. So when you take an evangelist is part of the office of the evangelist, fivefold ministry, no. And then you can't say be an evangelist. We define an evangelist based on your ability to mount crusades. The number of crusades that you are able to run in a year. The number of souls that you were able to win through the crusades. And I was a powerful evangelist. And I said, Ojina ke muna o preachi, and I say Ojina ebia makola, and I say kegetia na wenya microphone bi na o preachi na ya tuni din evangelist. Please. Of course, there is nothing wrong with that, and the evangelist has the special grace to bring in more souls at a time through maybe the crusades and all. But the true measure of the success of an evangelist is not how many souls you are able to win, because winning souls and discipling them is a duty of every believer. Rather, the measure of the success of an evangelist is predicated on the fact that the degree to which you are able to train the church so that every member will have heightened evangelical fires, so that all the members will now be involved in the work of the ministry of what? Bringing in more souls to Christ. I don't know if you really get what I mean. Enti uye evangelista, ujumedie kesi ya wose udini se, e wose making sure se asore no anase e Christopher ekon ebedo e yeso winning. So the technicality of an evangelist is to train believers so that believers will become more passionate about soul winning. So that so as an evangelist obetima crusade but majority of his time, majority of his skills, majority of his technicalities and attention is not to the unbelievers, but rather to the believers, to train them for the work of the ministry. Enti se ene ye kase ye bom paye ana ye kompai bo a ubon se ohobeye ma inkanka se sampai bo no efa breakthrough prayers the place will be full. Oka se ye call evangelism you will not get anyone. So you will not get people who are interested, believers evangelism. What it means is that the evangelist or the office of the evangelist is not really doing his work well. The office of the evangelist is measured, the success of the evangelist is measured not by the number of crusades you are able to run in a year, but rather if you are called into the fivefold ministry as an evangelist, your primary duty is towards the church, is towards the saints. So the degree to which believers are having more passion for soul winning is the measure of success of the office of the evangelist. And this a Christopher Bibri empe se yebetwa kra ama onyankopon a e kire se dwumedi na ye de share evangelist nsa no, it has been misunderstood, it has been misrepresented, and instead of the evangelist to train we in the church so that every believer will become passionate about soul winning, our evangelists are rather running from crusade to crusade and doing the soul winning, and they are telling us that our duty is to give them money so that they will do the crusades. Whereas in the text, it is that they will rather train us so that now all of us will be involved in the work of the ministry. So this is the standard for everyone, for all the other aspects of the fivefold ministry. Be it evangelist, as I've just given, the same applies to the pastor, the same applies to the apostle, the same applies to the prophet, and then all. This is very sensitive, and then I'll pause here because of the time, and then next week I will delve deeper into it, still with the fivefold ministry. So when you take a prophet, the same thing. So the prophet is not measured by na yasa queue and I say a line. You say about prophet or consultation goes or no otimi hu. There be the measure of the success of the prophet is your ability to be able to equip the saints or Christians so that now we will become independent of you and dependent on God. So the ability to train Christians to understand the world of the spirit. Sa sunsun wiasim no ade no e was enyese special people na was omuye there be prophet no. Your duty is not to be the one doing it for us and we just paying you and then in the name of consultation. No, that is not the original idea of the fivefold ministry. The measure of success of the prophet is the degree to which believers are able to hear God for themselves. They are able to see dreams and visions for themselves and interpret it for themselves without having to pick up a phone and call you. Say, Debia, I just offer me say, I said, saying, no, the ability for them to also operate in the prophetic, not in the office of the prophet, but at least every Christian has what we call the spirit of prophecy at work in him. So the work of the prophet, the work of the prophet is to give that idea or the mind of God to the people and to equip the believers so that they will be able to also operate with the spirit of prophecy. Their ability into the more a Christopher omu etimi etinyame ene for themselves, their ability to understand the operations in the world of the spirit, their ability to do these things without having to depend on you again is the measure of your success. The same applies to the others. So God richly bless you very much for this evening. And we'll continue next week still on the church and then the fivefold ministry. You must understand that the fivefold ministry is not representing the priesthood of the old covenant. The priesthood is for all of us. The fivefold ministry represents special forces. Because the church is a training ground, they have been given by God as the trainers or the professors or the top generals to train every saint in the church for the work of the ministry. It is not they doing the ministry and our duty is to support them. No, it is they training us so that all of us will now be actively involved in the work of the ministry. God richly bless you, and I'll come your way again on Friday. Please do well and share. Many of these things, many people have to understand it so that they can also join in the conversation. So do well and share. Don't forget our YouTube page. Subscribe to our YouTube page. That is the New African Concept. And then that of Facebook too, the New African Concept. Like and then follow. And share so that many others can also hear what we are talking about. I'll come your way on Friday as we take a look at we continue what we've started. That is reconstructing the soul of Ghana. Reconstructing the soul of Ghana. I've been talking to you about the two schools. people have started, registering or have started contacting me, and then you don't have to also miss out. We have the School of Transformational Leadership and then the School of Apologetics. Both of them will be running at the same time from July to September. At least you can choose one of the schools and then you can represent. School of Transformational Leadership. We want to train tomorrow's leaders today. Please don't miss out. Do well and then contact me so that you register for it. We are about only 2 weeks away from starting. Make sure that you register for the School of Transformational Leadership or the School of Apologetics, where you understand more on the Bible and then the Quran and then Christianity, religion, and then all those kind of stuffs. All the doubts on your mind will be cleared through the School of Apologetics, and for each of them we'll be awarding certificates as well. Yeah, so if you are a youth leader, if you are a pastor, you can also allow or recommend it to your youth leaders, your youth pastors, to also sign on board. And I can assure you that their lives will not be the same. And there will also be tools to be able to bless your youth particularly. Stay blessed, and let's meet on Friday for the extended edition of the Voice of Reformation.